The Pacific theater was nothing like the war the world had witnessed in Europe. There were no long trenches stretching across open fields, no vast tank divisions roaring across plains. Instead, there were suffocating jungles where the sun barely touched the ground, where every shadow could hide a rifle barrel or a bayonet. American Marines who stepped onto islands like Guadalcanal, Peleliu, and Tarawa felt as though they had entered another world, one where the very earth seemed to resist their presence. Thick vines wrapped around their legs like living restraints, and insects swarmed like they were defending their territory. But it wasn't nature alone that made this battleground terrifying. It was the Japanese infantry, trained in Bushido, discipline, and the belief that death in battle was honorable. The Japanese soldiers didn't fight like the Germans. They didn't always form defensive lines or retreat under heavy fire. Instead, they embraced the jungle as an ally. They dug spider holes, tiny camouflaged pits barely large enough for a man to crouch inside. From these hidden nests, they would wait in silence for hours, sometimes days, until an unsuspecting patrol passed by. A sudden burst of gunfire or a screaming bayonet charge would erupt, turning calm into chaos in seconds. Marines reported that the jungle felt alive with whispers, as if the enemy could see them even when they saw nothing but leaves and fog. Bolt-action rifles like the Springfield M1903 and even the semi-auto M1 Garand struggled in these close, quarter ambushes. Branches deflected shots, visibility was near zero, and by the time a Marine raised his rifle, a Japanese soldier could already be within striking distance, sword lifted high for a killing blow. That was the strategy: get close, strike fast, and vanish. Night patrols became nightmares. Men slept with one eye open, fingers curled around their weapons, because every snapping twig made hearts race. In these oppressive jungles, fear wasn't just a feeling, it was a constant companion. For the Marines, it became painfully clear that traditional battlefield tactics were useless here. They needed something that could answer ambush with instant, overwhelming power. Something that didn't require aiming down sights, something that didn't jam in the mud, something that could tear through foliage and stop a charging enemy in their tracks before they could raise a bayonet or scream a war cry. That need, born from blood and desperation, would soon lead to the arrival of a weapon the Japanese infantry were never prepared to face: the trench gun. The story of the Winchester Model 1912 Trench Gun didn't begin in the Pacific jungles, but in the muddy, corpse-littered trenches of World War I, when American forces first brought pump-action shotguns to Europe. German soldiers were horrified by the weapon's devastating power in close combat. They even filed a diplomatic protest claiming the shotgun was inhumane for warfare. The protest was ignored, and the legend of the trench gun was born. But by World War II, warfare had evolved. Battles were no longer just lines of trenches and barbed wire. Now, soldiers fought in cities, forests, deserts, and most brutally, in jungle hellscapes where visibility rarely stretched beyond a few meters. The U.S. military realized that the shotgun, once a secondary support weapon, might become a primary tool for survival in close quarters combat. The Winchester Model 1912, later known simply as the M12, underwent modifications to meet the demands of modern warfare. It was shortened, fitted with a heat shield to protect hands from barrel heat after rapid firing, and equipped with a bayonet lug to allow the attachment of the fearsome MI 1917 bayonet. With a 5-round tubular magazine loaded with odrid buckshot, each shell containing multiple lethal pellets, it became a weapon designed not for suppression, but for annihilation at point-blank range. A single trigger pull could unleash a spread capable of cutting down multiple enemies standing shoulder to shoulder. In training, Marines immediately noticed something different. This wasn't a precision rifle meant for distant engagement. This was a weapon meant for sudden, explosive violence, a perfect match for the unpredictable chaos of jungle warfare. When crates of these shotguns arrived in Marine camps across the Pacific, there was curiosity mixed with grim excitement. Veterans of earlier battles with the Japanese had seen friends dragged into the foliage by sudden ambushes, heard the screams of men pulled into hand combat where rifles became useless. The trench gun represented something primal, a return to raw, up-close combat power. In the hands of a determined Marine, the M12 wasn't just a firearm. It was a statement of intent. It said, if you come close, you die. Many Japanese officers believed their Bushido-driven infantry could intimidate American troops in close combat. They carried samurai swords as symbols of honor, leading Banzai charges with fearless devotion. But the battlefield doesn't reward symbols, it rewards effectiveness. And soon, word would spread through American ranks that the trench gun, especially when used with slam fire, could turn a Japanese charge into a wall of bodies in seconds. The weapon's evolution from trench warfare to jungle warfare wasn't just a technical upgrade. It was the birth of a legend, a weapon perfectly forged for the brutal, face-to-face slaughter that awaited in the Pacific. What made the Winchester M12 truly terrifying was not just its power, but a mechanical feature that turned it into something bordering on unstoppable: slam fire. Unlike typical shotguns that require the trigger to be released and pulled again after each pump, the M12 allowed a Marine to hold the trigger down and simply rack the pump to fire continuously. Each pump sent another shell roaring out of the barrel in a rapid, thunderous rhythm. Boom, pump, boom, pump. No hesitation, no pause, no mercy. In the hands of a trained soldier, it could unleash all 5 shells in less than 2 seconds, a wall of buckshot so dense that charging infantry simply collapsed before they could even process what was happening. To understand the horror of slam fire, imagine a Japanese Banzai charge. The jungle erupts with war cries, dozens of soldiers rushing forward with bayonets and swords, their goal to overwhelm through sheer ferocity. Normally, a Marine with a bolt-action rifle would get 1 shot, maybe 2, before the enemy closed the distance. But with a slam-fire trench gun, he wouldn't need to aim carefully. He would brace the weapon at hip height, finger tight on the trigger, and pump as fast as muscle and adrenaline allowed. Each blast would tear through multiple attackers, shredding foliage, wood, and flesh alike. Eyewitness accounts speak of enemies literally lifted off their feet by the impact, entire waves of soldiers cut down in seconds. The psychological effect was devastating. This wasn't like facing rifle fire, where bullets snapped through the air in single lines. This was thunder. This was a storm of lead that turned the front line into a killing zone. For the Marines, slam fire became more than just a firing method. It became a survival ritual. They trained their muscles to work the pump without thought, building a rhythm that echoed like a heartbeat in combat. Many described the sensation as entering a trance, where the world narrowed to the sound of the pump and the recoil slamming into their shoulder. Some even carved notches into the wooden stock for every close quarters kill, their trench guns becoming personal grim markers of jungle warfare. Meanwhile, Japanese troops began to refer to these shotguns in hushed tones. Survivors of slam fire encounters reported seeing men ripped apart at such close range that their bodies didn't fall cleanly. They crumpled, as if struck by an invisible hammer. The effectiveness of slam fire was so great that some commanders issued orders specifically pairing trench gun operators with rifle squads, using them as response units whenever tunnels were discovered or foliage concealed enemy movement. The sound of rapid shotgun fire became a signal on the battlefield. It meant someone had made contact, and it meant the jungle was about to erupt in violence. In those moments, the Winchester M12 was not just a weapon, it was a force of nature.